Hi, my name is Elisa Soriano, and I teach kindergarten at LREI. For my service learning program, I created a buddy program with my kindergartners at LREI and the kindergartners at the Cook School, which is a self-contained special ed school serving children who have mild to moderate cognitive or developmental disabilities and severe language-based learning disabilities as well. My initial motivation came from a desire to connect my students with children who were different than them. In my experience, I find that most of the diversity, equity, and inclusion work that is done is focused around race or gender. And I find that not enough work is being done with neurodiversity, where neurological differences are recognized and respected as any other human variation. It was important to me to find a class to partner with where the children were the same age as my students and had physical neurological differences as opposed to ones that were not visible to the naked eye. We got photographs of Cook students and their names, and we sent them ours too, so that our children could familiarize themselves with their new buddy. This also allowed the students to begin discussing any physical differences they saw in the safe, controlled space of our classroom, as opposed to in front of their buddies their first day meeting. We also told the children that on our first visit, we wanted them to think about how their school was the same and different from ours. And this same different question is the basis for the diversity, equity, inclusion work that we do in kindergarten, and it also connected beautifully with our social studies curriculum at the time, which was our school study. We met once a week for a few months towards the end of the school year. Some weeks we went there, some weeks they came to our school, and then they played, and they really did play. Watching them interact was magical. They figured out ways to communicate with their buddies. I also enjoyed watching the children as they experienced difference, which for many of them was uncomfortable at first, but then the part that I enjoyed was watching them not be scared of it. My children at 5 and 6 were learning how to go beyond tolerance and acceptance. It was also refreshing the way I could seamlessly weave this program into every aspect of kindergarten learning. The children wrote letters and drew pictures to their buddies. They made maps of how to get to the Cook School. They wrote stories during writing about their experiences. One thing I will never forget is a conversation that I had with Cook's kindergarten teacher when I thanked him for allowing my students to have this unique opportunity and what a long-lasting effect this would have on my children for the rest of their lives. And he said to me, "No, thank you." And at first I didn't understand, but he explained that his students almost never get to interact with typically developing children, and so that this was transformative for them as well. That's when I knew I had started a service learning program and that this wasn't just simply a buddy program or a community service opportunity. Both parties were engaging in meaningful human connection, both receiving something and giving something of themselves.
Interview you about the pen pals with the senior citizens. So what gave you the idea to do the pen pals?
Do you know Harriet, the reading specialist who's here? Harriet thought of this a long time ago, but nobody ever did it. And the senior citizens, she knew about this organization, and it's called Visiting Neighbors. And they're right here in Greenwich Village, nearby.
I interviewed them.
You went there and interviewed them, and we already have a relationship with them because we give Valentines to them every year. We're one of the few schools that does that. And Visiting Neighbors, I guess you already know, are senior citizens who live alone. So they're in their own homes, but these volunteers from Visiting Neighbors keep them company and run errands for them. So we came up with this idea of the Pen Pal program, and we have senior citizens. Our students write letters to specific senior citizens, and then each student will get a letter back, and they're going to form a relationship with each other. And they're going to learn things about each other. That's why we're calling it service learning. And just like you're learning about immigration, we're going to learn what their lives are like in Greenwich Village, what interests people have in common.
Hi, I'm Jessica.
Hi, I'm Megan.
Our goal was to design a year-long service learning curriculum that is integrated in our social studies, English language arts, and advisory work.
Our driving question has been, what does it mean to have enough, and what would it look like to live within the bounds of enough instead of scarcity or surplus? This question came out of our ancient civilizations study. We study the cause and effects of the agricultural revolution, and one of the main ripple effects was the birth of surplus. For the first time, we had more food than we needed, and With this surplus came the psychological mindset that more is better, and we decided that we wanted to challenge that and really ask the question: does surplus create a feeling of wellness in our lives and wellness in the planet? We also read the book Seed Folks, a story about a community that starts a community garden, and we visited a community garden in our own neighborhood whose worms were actually taken care of this winter. And we're reading Omnivore's Dilemma, which is a more recent look at how farming is impacting the planet and our eating habits.
The work to be done for us, one is actually redesigning our third trimester curriculum, and we really wanted to deepen and solidify the understanding that surplus created social stratification, and what that looks like today for our society, and it created environmental impacts on the earth in which we're no longer living in harmony with the earth. So a couple ways we want to do this is, one, design a project within the school, the students who design a project that examines their own lives and looks at scarcity and abundance in their lives. And we also want to learn from people who are already involved and already giving back to their communities, especially with the stratification of classes because of food surplus. So we're going to visit and work on an urban farm in New York City, learn from people, want to partner with them, and learn about the food inequities that are results of surplus.
Hello, Amanda.
Hi, Jennifer.
We're here today to talk about our service learning project that we did with our 5th, 6th, and 7th graders this fall and winter.
We partnered with the DeRote program and had senior citizens, 4 or 5 senior citizens, every Friday come down to our school and meet with about 8 or 9, or no, it was more than that, it was 14 of our advisees in a book partnership and an afternoon of activities.
We had snacks, we all read the same book, we read chapters, and then we not only talked about the characters and read aloud to each other, but we also did a bunch of interactive activities.
And we watched our students become really comfortable with people of a different generation whom they didn't know before, and expand their friendships. We have kids who are still communicating with those senior citizens from the fall, and we've had kids sign up for yet another semester of DeRote Book Buddies, and they came in and were disappointed to see some of the people that they met in the fall weren't there, but are already making new relationships.
We think this is a really valuable intergenerational connection. We've even heard from some of our students that the reason they like this so much is because their own grandparents are far away or sadly deceased, and this is a great opportunity for them to get to know people who are older than them.
And the converse, we've also heard that it's very meaningful for the senior citizens that we're working with, who've also said that their grandchildren moved away or have grown up and just need another connection with younger people. We also had the experience of going to visit a senior citizen in his apartment, a 96-year-old man whose name is Ted, and he showed us artwork that his wife, who was a Holocaust survivor, made, and spoke to us at length about resilience and moving on from catastrophe and tragedy in your life. And that was a long, ongoing discussion that we had with the students that was very valuable, and we had parents respond to us about how that continued at home for students. So that was part of it.
So that was our service learning connection. We've really enjoyed it a lot, and we hope to continue it in the middle school for as long as we can, as long as we have kids who are interested.
Hi everyone, we are 3 high school teachers at LREI, and we're going to talk to you about our service learning projects for this past year.
Great. I'm Jane Belton. I teach high school English here, and I was teaching an elective called Exile and Immigration, which is a literature elective for 11th and 12th graders. The kind of key questions I went into this project with were, how could listening and bearing witness be an act of radical engagement and service? How might we work to shift the narratives around immigration? And how might we look inward to think about our own identities and how those identities affect how we understand the narratives?
Hi, I'm Jessica, and I teach high school Mandarin. I also did a service project originally. My plan was to educate the high school communities more about what to recycle, what are reusables, and what are trash. And in addition, plan better ways to make the collections of these items easier.
And I'm Pat, I'm a high school math teacher, and I wanted to find a way to use math to raise up and make clear the struggles that marginalized communities were in the midst of, whether that be in our community or in our wider society. So a way of using math as a witness to the struggles of marginalized communities.
So for my elective, I partnered with New Sanctuary Coalition of New York, which is an interfaith organization that provides services for immigrants kind of going through the court process. And we partnered with their accompaniment program. So students in the elective, we accompanied immigrants through their court hearings. We did several accompaniments over the trimester, and then we really reflected and discussed what we had seen and experienced.
So for my project currently, I've identified that it was a little bit challenging to see which students and what student club to work with. Also, meeting once a week wasn't the best time for the idea that I have implemented. Therefore, I'm in the process of designing the unit or the project into a Mandarin class unit to have the current 11th graders to take ownership of the project.
And what became of the project in my class was more of a math research project. As it turns out, the habits of mind that I was trying to encourage the students to build on are actually ones that they really need a lot of pretty direct discussion of, direct instruction on. So it became more of a math research project that allowed them to apply some of the math we saw more in the second half of the course to situations that they were interested in. Some of them chose to talk about voting, some are talking about homeless populations here in the city, some are talking about nuclear power plants, and another's talking about the lottery. So they really went in a bunch of different directions.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're both saying resonates with me in that it was hard to plan and sort of know what to expect doing the project. And I think that's one thing I want to think about moving forward is how to plan for something that is really unpredictable, and even just down to logistics of knowing like how my class size and how to organize the accompaniments to the project. And so that's one challenge with partnering with kind of an organization is not knowing all the details all the time and kind of having to let go. I think the thing I want to think about next year as well is how to share or how to allow kids to share out their learning with a larger community. And then I also really want to get more involved with New Sanctuary and kind of allow students to really get into the work, the day-to-day work of the organization and go to the offices and even kind of involve ourselves in other areas so that we're more thoroughly invested in kind of partnering with the group.
So in addition to what Jane says about logistics and the same thing here, and in addition I feel our project for the next step is for students to take more ownership of the project. I feel I'm just transitioning the role from myself to them so they can come up with something that they really want to do and think makes the most sense. In addition, the lower middle school at LREI already have a program that implemented that maybe we can learn it from them, or there's an organization that they partner with called TerraCycle. And that's also something we could possibly extend it to high school, which is something we're currently working on.
Great. And so it's funny because the project really started in earnest in the second half of the class, and we are coming to the point right now as the class is ending where it would be really appropriate for students to start going out and looking, like being in contact with either the communities or the advocacy organizations that they're getting all this information from. And so I really am interested in starting earlier with as general mathematics within the realm of my class as possible, so that the students can really start to bring what they've learned out into the world and start to understand how math is used in the way that I described as a witness. So.